everyone. My name is Teresa Lewis. I'm the Director, Office of the Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization at the Department of Health and Human Services. Today we'll be providing training on the Small Business Review System for the originators. The Small Business Review System is designed to replace the paper-based manual process that was previously required. As you know, small business reviews are conducted for all contracts or acquisitions over the simplified acquisition threshold, $150,000. So if, however, it is set aside for small business, then your optive small business specialist will end the review. If it is other than a small business set aside, then it must also be reviewed by the SBA Small Business Procurement Center representative. So what is the Small Business Review System? It's the same process, it's the same data sets as in the manual or the paper-based 653. However, now it's an automated workflow. It is more transparent, so you will know where the review is at any point in time. You will also know exactly who has it. You will be able to track it. It has vacation rules. So if you're out of the office, then you actually can, then the next person that's in the review system can review it, or another small business specialist can review it, and then it can be sent to the reviewer, the next reviewer in the process. Yes, the SBA Small Business PCR is also a part of this process. So they have access to this information. You will be emailed and notified when it's time for you to conduct the review. You will also be able to print reports in the system as well as print the review, and it will actually have the date of each person in the review process that has reviewed the system. It is designed to save you time, since now you don't have to wait for a person to return from vacation, and again, you'll know where it is at any point in time. So to help me today with providing training, I'm going to invite Andrew to join me. Andrew?
Thank you, Teresa.
Hi, Andrew, thank you so much. And following the 1 hour training, we will then have a half hour for Q&As. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, thank you very much. So thank you everyone for joining me. I'm going to take you through a system focusing on the originator functionality. And before we even get into the slideshow, I'd like to point out that originator functionality is for basically the way that we've categorized that is if you belong to an operating division that originates review forms, you are considered an originator. So just because we've called this originator training does not mean there's any review involved. There is materials. So to continue on, as Teresa mentioned, the Small Business Review System provides a web-based automated platform for HHS acquisition staff to initiate, review proposal acquisitions, and provide approval through the acquisition workflow. Training is scheduled to last up to 1 hour and will consist of a series of demonstrations that will cover system basics, including logging into and navigating the Small Business Review System, Small Business Review form submission, review, and management, and SBRS search and reporting tools. Please save all questions until the end of training so that we can adequately address them. Okay. So the following user roles are currently available in the Small Business Review System. Of these roles, we're going to be discussing only originators. Originating roles in the Small Business Review System are currently contract specialists, contracting officers, head of contracting activities, and deputy head of contracting activities. The only reviewers, or the only of these roles, only 3 are reviewer roles and originator roles. The contracting officer, head of contracting activities, and deputy head of contracting activities roles are able to both create and review forms in the Small Business Review System. Contract specialists, however, are only able to initiate review forms. Once submitted, a Small Business Review form is routed along a chain of reviewers for approval before it is closed out. A review form can follow one of 3 conditionally dependent paths to close out based on dollar threshold levels. Now, these dollar threshold levels are determined by the total value of the total estimated value of the review form. And I'll point this out when we get to that point in the walkthrough. So the first threshold routing rule is that if the total value is less than $150,000, or that review form has a procurement method that is a small business set-aside, like 8A status, then the review form closes out following review and approval by a small business specialist. If the review form's total value is greater than $150,000, but still less than $5 million, that review form does not, or proceeds on to the SBA, so it requires approval by the SBA PCR prior to closeout. Lastly, if a form is greater than $5 million, then the form follows the full routing path with origination by a contract specialist or contracting officer, review by a small business specialist, SBA PCR, and lastly, the OSPU deputy director or director gives final approval to close out the review form. Today, I'm going to take you through a series of walkthroughs that are going to cover system basics, including logging into and navigating the small business review system. I'm going to show you how to manage a review form, which includes submitting a new review form, actually reviewing a review form for contracting officers, HCA and DHCA users, deleting or withdrawing a review form, and printing a review form. Additionally, I'm going to cover how to respond to a form that has been disapproved by a higher level approver in the routing process. And the last thing we're going to cover today are the searching and reporting tools available in the Small Business Review System. So, on screen right now, you can see that there's the link for the Small Business Review System. It is https://sbrs.hhs.gov, and we'll be providing you with that link. So I'm going to access the system. All right. Now, the process I'm about to take to log into the system is going to differ based on whether or not you're a new user or if you've reset your password. Because I'm not a new user, I can get right into the system after entering my user ID and personalized password. If you were a new user, you would have received an email containing your user ID and a default temporary password that's system generated and is only good for a one-time use in the system. Additionally, logging in with a temporary password will only allow you to have, I believe, 10 seconds of access before you're automatically routed to the user profile to change your password. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. For most users in the system, your user ID is going to be your email address. I'm going to use, for purposes of training, a dummy account so that I can jump in here and have pre-existing data. Your password, if you're a new user, will be new user, as that is the current default temporary password. User. And once you log in subsequent attempts after you've changed your password, you will use your personalized password to access the system. Once you've entered your login information, select the login button. This will bring you to the applications portfolio. The applications portfolio is a first level access to the system and is designed to hold multiple systems within it. As there is only one system currently available, the Small Business Review System, there is only one link in the bottom of the page. Now, at this point, if you want to access the user guide to help you with navigating through the system, one will be provided in the system banner. To access the user guide, you navigate to the system banner and then select the user guide link, which will bring you to the user guide page where you can download the user manual. I'm going to navigate back to the applications portfolio to take you through the process for changing your password. Now, from the applications portfolio, you can access the system, the Small Business Review System, by selecting the link in the panel at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to select Small Business Review System. And this brings me to my home page. Now, as I mentioned, you will only have a few seconds of access to this page prior to being forced to your user profile. A message will scroll across the top of the screen, approximately for the only amount of time you're able to see this screen, and it will remind you that you need to change your password. Now, you can manually navigate to the user profile in the system banner by selecting the user profile link. If you're a new user and you need to change your password, you can just wait a few seconds and you will automatically be redirected to the user profile. Selecting the user profile, when you need to reset your password, will only allow you to change one field on this page, and that is the password field. So, to change your password, enter your new password in the password field, and then select the Save Information button. Whatever you enter in this password field, prior to hitting the Save Information button, will be your new password. Okay. So saving it will change my password. Once you log in with an existing ID that you've already changed, the user profile will serve a different purpose. Instead of just for changing your password, the user profile will allow you to update your contact information on this page. This is important because the Small Business Review form will draw contact information automatically from your user profile. And I'll show you that when we get to the point for creating a new user review form. Okay. So I'm going to cancel out of here and give you a tour of the home page. To navigate back to your home page, select the Small Business Review System link. Now your home page consists of 3 panels. The first just provides basic system information, including the operating division and title that you're currently logged in under. On the right side of the page is a large table called your My Items work list. This work list will identify all review forms that are currently associated with your account. If you're an originator, this will include all forms that you've originated and are currently in the review process. If you are a reviewer, this will also include any forms that are currently in your work list that require your review and approval or disapproval. You can navigate between pages on the My Items list by selecting the numbers at the bottom of the page. Additionally, you can sort your list by selecting some of the headers in the columns in the My Items table. Selecting entry date, for instance, will sort the forms to order them by entry date. And lastly, the My Items table contains a control number column. Now the control number is an internal tracking number that is only for use within the system. It can be used to search for and access review forms that are no longer in your work list. And additionally, this control number link allows you to access review forms that are currently await your approval. For instance, selecting control number 009 here will open up that review form in the for me to make changes or review. Right. And also, the control number consists of 3 elements. The first is the fiscal year in which the form was created. The second is the originating operating division, which in this case will be your operating division. And the last is the sequential order in which that form was submitted by your operating division within the fiscal year. The last thing I'd like to point out on the home page is the Actions menu. This provides you with access to all system tools available to your user role. The Actions menu is located on the left side of the screen and provides access to the New button, which allows you to create a new review form, the Search button, which allows you to access the searching tools, and the Report button, which allows you to access the reporting tools. Lastly, there's also a Help page, which provides you with access to some basic system information. Additionally, it again provides the link to the user manual for further help using the system. All right. So now, I'd like to take you through the process for creating a new review form. To create a new review form, access the Actions menu and select the New button. This brings you to the first page of the Small Business Review form. The Small Business Review form consists of 4 pages, each with a number of sections detailing information for the review form. On the first page, this consists of the requisition number section, estimated dollar value section, and period of performance section. In the requisition number section, the first field is requisition number. This is where you'll enter the requisition number associated with your review form. If you do not have a requisition number currently available, you can enter not available at this time. Additionally, if you have another requisition number associated with the review form, you can enter it in the second field in the requisition section. Now, remember when I mentioned that the user profile is it draws information from the user profile into your review form. This is where that happens. So in the point of contact phone number, and point of contact email fields, this information is all drawn directly from your user profile. Right? So make sure that your information in your user profile, is up to date so that it will draw the correct information into your review form. Lastly, in the requisition section, specify the funding office associated with your review form. Next, fill in the estimated dollar value associated with the review form. In this case, the base price is possibly the most important field in this review form because it requires that you enter it before you can move on in filling in any other information. Additionally, the dollar values in this section will influence threshold routing rules that we discussed in the PowerPoint presentation before we began these walkthroughs. So in the base price field, enter your estimated base price. Additionally, you have the option to enter option year values. Now, entering an option year value will update the number of option years field automatically. If I currently have 1 option year specified. If I enter 2, it will update the option years to 2. Additionally, the value in the total value field, which, as I mentioned previously, is what determines the routing threshold values. The total value is an updated version of the base price plus the number of option years, option year values. So $1,000 or $10,000 entered into the base price plus $200 in the option years is $10,200. And lastly, on this page, you can specify the period of performance by selecting the calendar drop-down menus. Once all information has been added, you can, at this point, save your form to make sure that you don't lose any information. Now, you can navigate between pages without saving, but if you navigate away from this page by selecting the X button at the top of the screen, then you will lose all the information you've added to the review form. So just to be safe, you can save at any point in time. I'm going to select Save. Additionally, saving will add the form to for the first time, will add the form to your work list with the status of new, and it will assign it a new control number. In this case, 2014 HHS 0011. Now that all information has been added, I'm going to navigate to the second page of the review form. To do that, navigate to the bottom right-hand corner and select the Next button. This brings me to the second page, which contains the NACE code, size standard field, a drop-down menu where you specify whether or not a synopsis is required, and a product service description field. Now, the product or service description is where you add a general description of the review form's purpose. So what is the product or service being provided? Right. Once you've entered that, so product service. Once you've entered that, you can save again, and navigate to the third page, in the review form. The third page provides you with access to the proposed procurement method for the review form. Now, this is additionally as important as the base price, as depending on what you select here will influence the routing rules and also whether or not certain documents are mandatorily required for upload prior to submitting your review form for review. For instance, selecting an 8A sole source, the proposed procurement method, will simultaneously make it so that your review form will not require SBA approval, as it will be a small business set-aside. Secondarily, you will now be required to upload 2 additional documents before finalizing your initial submission of your review form. This is the 8A offer letter and 8A acceptance letter, and I'll show you that when we get to the point where we attach documents. Also, selecting GSA Federal Supply Schedule will ask you whether or not a limited source justification and approval is required. If you say that limited source justification is required, you're going to also need to upload a document with supporting information. If you say no, then that document is not required, and you will be able to submit your form without that document associated. Depending on the option selected here will influence the additional fields that are required by the procurement method. Additionally, you can select up to 2 procurement methods to be associated with your review form. I'm going to select Ability 1 and GSA Supply Schedule. You can also see that it has now automatically identified them as 50-50 procurement methods. If you'd like to update the percentage associated with one procurement method to weight it over the other, you can do that by manually changing the value in the percentage associated with the first procurement method. In this case, I'm going to change it to 70%. And once I tab out of that field, it will automatically update the other procurement method to 30%. Both procurement methods will add up to 100%. Okay. Once all information has been entered in procurement method, you can either enter prior procurement history, or if no new prior procurement history is associated with this review form, you can select no prior procurement history. Selecting prior procurement history will open up another field where you can select procurement method similar to the process shown above. And lastly, on this page, you can specify any types of market research that were conducted during this process. Once all information has been entered on this page, select the Save button just to be safe, and then select the Next button to continue on to the fourth page of the review form. The fourth page of the review form consists of 3 sections. The first is you specify whether or not this is a consolidation or bundling of 2 or more previous contracts. The second is whether or not a subcontracting plan is required. Now again, the dollar value will influence whether or not this field is mandatory. If you have specified a total estimated value of greater than $650,000, then you will be required to, at the very least, specify whether or not a subcontracting plan is required. If you say yes or no, that will allow you to submit the form. If you enter nothing in this drop-down menu, then you will be unable to submit your review form. Because my value is less than $650,000, I'm not going to require a subcontracting plan. Now, the last thing you do on this page is specify whether or not a small disadvantaged business plan is required. And once you've entered all this information, as a contracting officer or as a HCA or DHCA user, you can submit the form for review. Right? Submitting at this point will generate error messages. That is because this form has a few documents that need to be uploaded before you can, a few supporting documents, that need to be uploaded before you can finally submit the document. Now, for contracting specialists or contract specialists, I'd like to point out that an additional field will be available. Routing for contract officers and higher in the routing chain is done automatically and manually, and forms are automatically routed from one approver to the next as it goes through the system. Contract specialists, on the other hand, may choose the contracting officer they'd like to route the form to. So there's an additional drop-down menu with a list of all contracting officers associated with your operating division. You may select that officer, add them to your review form, and then when you select the Submit button, it will route the form directly to that user's work list. As a CO user, selecting Submit after uploading these documents will route the form to the small business specialist that's responsible for your operating division. So, as I mentioned, there is an error message at the top of the screen, which notifies me that an acquisition plan document, market research document, and independent government cost estimate document are required prior to my submission of this form. So I'm going to go ahead and attach those documents. To do that, locate the Actions menu on the left side of the page and select the Save button. Now, to make sure that you don't lose any information in this process, be sure you save before you move on to the Attach Documents page. After saving, select Attach Document. This brings you to the Attach Supporting Documents page. This page consists of the Upload panel, which allows you to choose and identify the type of document that you'd like to upload. Additionally, there's a table at the bottom of the page which will list all documents currently associated with the review form. This table lists all document types and whether or not a document has been uploaded. So I'm going to go ahead and upload the 3 documents that were specified that I need. I'll select an acquisition plan document, and then selecting the document type in the drop-down menu, and then in the document name field, select the Browse button, and navigate to your review form, or to your supporting document. Okay. Selecting Attach will load the document into the table at the bottom of the page. If you have loaded a document by mistake and you would like to remove it, you can select the Delete link associated with that row in the table at the bottom of the page. Now I'm going to go ahead and load in the IGCE in Market Research Documents. Now all 3 documents have been added to the table. You can see here that additional documents may be uploaded. As I mentioned previously, if you had selected 8A as a procurement method, you would need to upload an acceptance letter and an offer letter to this table before you could submit the review form. Okay. Once all information has been added, select the return button to go back to your review form. Now this brings you to the first page of your review form. Look over the information to make sure that everything you've entered is correct, and select the next button. Complete this process for each page, reviewing the information as you go. And then, when you're on the last page, after all information has been entered that you'd like to enter prior to submission, you can select the Submit button. Selecting Submit will send the document into to the reviewer that you either specified if you're a CS user, or to your small business specialist if you're a contracting officer. The item will also appear in your table. If I sort by entry date, you can see that the new review form I created is now under review. Here we go. By the small business specialist. So that concludes the process for initiating a new review form. Once you've sent off the form, it will still be available from your table. You can at any point decide to withdraw your form from the review process. To do that, navigate to a review form and select the Withdraw button. This will take the form out of the review process and close it out. Now that being said, withdraw does not remove the form from the table entirely. Withdrawing a review form will only add it to will allow it to be searchable, and it will still appear in reports. If you have submitted a new form and you would like to delete that form, you can, prior to submission, navigate to a new form and select the Delete button. Selecting Delete will prompt you, as it will with withdrawal, whether or not you'd like to complete this action. Selecting OK will take this form out of the system entirely. So if you accidentally create a form that you didn't mean to, you can remove it out of the system. It's encouraged that you be careful about what you submit in the review chain, because then you have to withdraw the form and it will still be available in searches. So that's the process for withdrawing or deleting a review form. Next, I'd like to show you how to review and print a form. To do that, I'm going to access this form that's under CO Review. And I'm going to select to print. So as a reviewer, it may be easier for you to print out a copy for your review or to keep it for your records. To print a review form, locate the Actions menu on the left side of the page and select the Print View button. This brings you to a page that is in a different format that's printer friendly. To actually print the review form, select the Print button in the upper left-hand side of the page. This will generate a Windows prompt that will ask you to select the local printer for you to print a hard copy of this review form for your records. To navigate back to your review form, select the Return button at the top of the page. Now, as a reviewer, you can access the information. You can scroll down to look over the information in the review form. Now remember that once you submit this form, it will leave your operating division and go to your small business specialist for review. Okay. So the first step in the review process is to look over the information to check for accuracy and ensure that all information has been entered. Scrolling through, I see that a lot of fields are empty, but that's okay for training. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the page and check the Review Information panel. Now, this is new. In the original form, there were only 13 items. In a review form that's been submitted, there are 2 new sections. This is Review Information and Supporting Documents. Review Information contains a table in addition to that provides information on actions taken on the review form, in addition to the options to approve or disapprove of a review form, and to add comments to the review form. Now, these fields are important as the action you take in the review process will now appear in the review information table. The review information table provides your information or the information of any user who takes an action on the review form in the first few columns. The first column is the title of the person. The second is the user's name. The third is the action taken. In this case, this form was just recently originated, so the action is originator. The date that the form was submitted, and then any comments associated with the review form. Once submitted, the comment is just going to say that it was originated. When you take an action and you enter any comments in the field, the comments entered in this field here will appear in the comments column. So if you decide to disapprove of a review form, you have to specify in the comments field your reason for disapproval. This will provide the originator with the information they need to update and change the form. So in this case, I'm going to disapprove of a review form because a lot of information is missing. In the Actions drop-down menu, select Disapprove with Comments or Approve if you decide to approve, and then enter comments associated with it. So missing information. Okay. At the bottom of the page, there's additionally supporting documents table. This is where you can view supporting documents that have been loaded during the submission process. Once you've completed your review, select the Review Completed button at the bottom of the page. Now, because I selected Disapprove with Comments, it's going to take this review form and send it back to the originator, which was a contract specialist, for changes to be made. These changes are now, the status will change to back to author, and once the originator can either choose to withdraw the form from submission process, or the originator can make changes and then resubmit it to the reviewer for approval. Now, if the status is, to respond to a disapproval, you can look in your My Items menu and see that the status of one of your review forms is back to author. This means that it has been rejected by a higher level approver and you need to make changes to resubmit it. Or, again, you can choose to withdraw at any time. In the My Items table, you can access a review form by selecting the control number link associated with that review form. Now, as this is your review form, you can make changes to the fields on this page. Before making any changes, scroll down to the bottom to see what comments were added. The small business specialist reviewing my review form has rejected my review form, identifying that funding office is missing and that I need to identify the funding office before I can resubmit the form for approval. So I'm going to scroll to the top of the page, locate the funding office field, select the funding office, and once you've made all changes required by the next level reviewer, scroll back down to the bottom of the page and select the Resubmit button. Selecting Resubmit will again add another row in the review information table that says that you resubmitted the form for review. Additionally, it will change the status to CO review or SBS review, depending on which is the next level reviewer in the process. So that concludes my walkthrough of review form management. Next, I'd like to take you through a quick walkthrough of the searching and reporting tools available in SBRS. To access the searching tool, navigate to the Actions menu on the left side of the page and select the Search button. Now, the search functionality differs significantly from report functionality in its application. Search functionality is primarily used to access review forms currently in the system. The reporting tool, on the other hand, is to print out a list of review forms or data pertaining to review forms in the system. So search tool includes the operating division, drop-down menu. For originators, you will only be able to access review forms that are associated with your operating division. So you will only have one option in this drop-down menu. So I'm going to choose HHS. Okay. Additionally, you can specify any originator from your operating division. If you'd like to search only review forms that have been conducted by Andrew CO or Leonard CO, depending on which account I'm using, you can find them in the drop-down menu here. Additionally, you can search by funding office, and if you know the control number associated with the review form or the requisition number associated with the review form, you can enter those to navigate directly to a particular review form. The last thing you're going to do on this page is identify the date range. Now, the date range and operating division fields are mandatory to conduct a search. Every other field on this page is optional. Specifying a date range here, I'm going to make sure that I have a nice long range so that data will actually populate. Okay. Once all information has been added, select the search button at the bottom of the page. This will bring you to the search results list. The search result list provides information similar to what you'll see in your work list. It gives you access to the control number, operating division, who originated the form, is a new column, but it identifies who originated the form. Additionally, the funding office, requisition number, entry date, status, and current location of the review form. So just because this form isn't in your work list, you can still locate forms that are currently up for approval within your operating division. To actually navigate to a review form, you can select the link in the control number link in the control number column. As with the form that we rejected previously as a contracting officer, that form is no longer listed in our work list. If you would like to see the actions being taken on that form, even though it's no longer in your work list, you can locate it by searching for the form using the search tool and then finding the control number associated. Selecting the link in the control number column will bring you to that review form where you can look over the information that is currently under review. If at any point you'd like to reset or refine your search, you can select the buttons at the top of the page. Selecting Reset Search will take you back to the search page and wipe all the fields so that you have a blank page to conduct a new search. If you'd like to refine your search to narrow down the criteria, you can select Refine Search button. Selecting Refine Search will bring you back to the search page with all the information that you added still there. Now, at any point in this process, you can navigate back to your home page by selecting the Cancel SBRS Home link in the Actions menu. So navigate to the Actions menu, and at the very bottom there's a small link that says Cancel SBRS Home. Selecting this link will bring you to your home page. And that concludes a walkthrough of the searching tools. The last thing I'd like to do is show you how to run a report in SBRS. To run a report, navigate to the Actions menu and select the Report button. This brings you to the report page. Currently, there are only 3 reports available in the Small Business Review System. This is the Total List Report, Procurement Method Statistics Report, and My Items Report. The Total List Report provides you with access to, well, basically, you can generate a list of all review forms meeting criteria that you enter in the fields provided. The Procurement Method Statistics Report, on the other hand, will provide you with a breakdown of procurement methods by operating division and the dollar values associated with those procurement methods. Lastly, the My Items report will provide a printable list of all the forms in your current work list within a specified date range. For this example, I'm going to run a total list report. The first step in this process is to specify which type of report you'd like to run. So I'm going to select Total List Report. Selecting the radio button corresponding to the report will identify that's the report you'd like to run. Next, specify the operating division. Again, as you're an originator, you will only have access to reports from your operating division. So I'm going to select HHS. Additionally, you can choose to filter your results by status and dollar range. Status is the status associated with a review form. For instance, if you want to search only forms that are under CO review, you can do so by selecting CO review in this drop-down menu. If you would like to conduct a search on completed forms or withdrawn forms, you can do that using this drop-down menu as well. Lastly, you can filter by dollar value. If you'd like to generate a report on all forms that are less than $150,000, between $150,000 $650,000, between $650,000 and $5 million, and lastly, greater than $5 million, you can do so using the dollar range. Additionally, you can sort the forms by either control number or entry date by selecting the radio buttons in the Sort By section. The last thing required before conducting a search is to select the date range. To select a date range, it's similar to the process for specifying your period of performance or the date range for a search. just select the field and a drop-down menu will appear. Select the date, and again, I'm going to add a large net so that we can make sure that we have data that appears in the report. Once your date has been specified, you can run the report to generate a list. So I'm going to, having entered all information, select the Run Report button at the bottom of the page. You can immediately see the differences between this and the search page. The search page was similar to a work list and contained a series of links for you to access review forms. This, on the other hand, contains a table with, although it has similar information, the control number is no longer a clickable link. Now, this provides you with a printable list. The purpose of the reporting is to save a report of the reporting tool is to save a report for your records. You can either print a hard copy by selecting the print button, or alternatively, you can export the review form to your desktop for reformatting, or just to save a local copy to your computer. To export a copy of your report, select the Save As drop-down menu and choose the type you'd like to save it as. Currently, there are only two options available, which is Word or Excel. I'm going to select Word. And then after you specify the format, select the Export button. This will prompt you to save the review form or save the report or open it so that you can review it and make formatting changes. Okay? I'm going to say Cancel instead. Now, at any point, if you generate the report and decide that you'd like to change up your criteria or run a different report, you can select the Refine or Reset button. These function similarly to the searching tool. In this case, I'm going to reset my review form, or my report, and select the Reset button. This brings me back to the report page with all fields wiped. And again, as with any page within the system, you can navigate back to your home page by selecting the Cancel SBRS Home link at the bottom of the Actions menu. So this concludes my walkthrough of the Small Business Review System. I'd like to invite Teresa over to help answer any questions you may have about the review system. Let's see if I can get the questions up. Oh, we've cut a few more than last time.
All right. So first question, curious why we cannot use our PIV cards for access to the system. That is not a function at this time, but it's certainly an enhancement that we can consider for the future.
In your demonstration, the form was rejected because it was missing the payment office. Can't the system be set up to with mandatory information that must be entered prior to being able to submit the form for initial review? That is true. The form does have several fields which are mandatory. These are prioritized to the most important fields. Just because a field is not mandatory does not mean that you shouldn't enter the information prior to submission.
Very good. And as this system is developed, in one of the future versions, we actually are going to integrate it with our acquisition and finance systems. So next question.
When are we expected to start using the
Small Business Review System?
Exactly.
The Small Business Review System is expected to be mandatory shortly. What I've asked the small business specialists to do is, for those that have already started for fiscal year 14, for the small business specialists to maintain a copy and a log so that that information can be entered into the system. We are tweaking the system. There are just a couple other things that we have to do, and so I will send notification out to all of the optives on the effective use date. But first and most importantly, we wanted to ensure that everyone had an opportunity to be trained on the system. Next question, Andrew.
Okay. In the example provided, the data entry took 30 minutes. This is much longer than the current process. I'd like to jump in and address the first part. In that the process I took an extremely long amount of time because I was pointing out the fields and everything. The actual process, when I do it just in general to play with the system, is very quick. So as you get familiar with the system, the process should go very smoothly.
Absolutely.
Right. And I believe there was a second part.
Was any thought given to the time constraints being placed on staff to enter the additional data elements required by this system? Yes, absolutely, which is why we've automated the process. Again, only because we were walking through step by step to explain everything to you is why it took as long as it did. And we wanted to give everyone an opportunity to see the various aspects of the system. But as you, the individual, Originator form, it's not going to take you as long because, for example, you won't be running reports during the when you originate your form. So that is why it took as long as it has, but it won't take you that long. So Andrew, next question, please.
Okay, so where and when can we get the presentation for this training, which I believe is the webcast?
Yes.
Okay.
So Andrew stated earlier that a user manual will be made available. We do have the presentation, and we will also make the presentation available to all of the acquisition personnel. We will work with workforce development to provide that information to everyone.
Okay. Once a complete 653 form has been submitted, what timeframes are we looking at to get approval at the various levels?
So your contracting officer, depending on whom you select as your contracting officer, will determine how long it takes. It depends on their workload and what their priorities are. You might want to give them a nudge every now and then if they have not provided it to you within the timeline that you're asking for. The SBA PCR, they are regulatorily provided 5 business days to complete their review. In the past, it has taken sometimes longer than that. But now, because we have this automated system, we can give them a nudge, as well as they will have the notification, and it won't take them as long, and nor will it for our small business specialists, your respective small business specialists. I've asked them to complete their reviews within 2 business days.
Okay. And what happens when the 653 form is disapproved and there's non-concurrence?
So if the form is disapproved, then you have several options. One is, which is what we encourage, is for you to have a conversation with either the small business specialist or the SBA PCR to include the small business specialist on why it was non-concurred or disapproved. The purpose of this is to assist all of you with getting the acquisitions approval up front, but that usually requires advanced involvement with the small business specialist on the front end. When you are considering a acquisition, you really should have your small business specialist involved with advanced acquisition planning so that it does not become an issue. But if it does and it's disapproved, those are the steps that you're going to have to take. And because one other thing that I'd like to add is the Small Business Administration has the authority to stop a procurement. We don't want that to happen because then that could delay your procurement for several months, and we don't want that to happen. So really it's open communication with your small business specialist as well as the Small Business Administration so that we can resolve whatever the matters may be.
Will you receive automatically generated emails? Yes, you will receive an email at any point where a form that you're associated with either appears in your work list for reviewers, or if you're an originator, you will be updated every time that an action is taken on your form. All right. Okay. Additionally, you can check in your work list. It will show you every time something changes. You'll be able to see that the status has changed associated with your review form at any point in time.
Okay. So, Andrew, the question is, so there is no official way to totally delete a form so that it does not appear in the system?
That's not entirely correct. While I did mention that withdrawing a form keeps it in the system, you are able to delete forms. This is primarily for use during the initiation phase, where you're creating a new review form and you decide that perhaps you've entered information incorrectly, you'd like to start over. You can delete a form at that point. Subsequently, while it may be possible to review a form later on, remove. It may be a little more difficult. So I'm not entirely sure about that functionality at that point, but it's not entirely impossible.
So the next question is, will this system be the system of record? Will I be required to print the approved form, or can I reference the website where it is stored? First part of the question is yes, this will be the system of record. The second part of the question, no, you're not required to print the form. You absolutely can reference the website where the documents are stored. I know that there's some individuals who are very comfortable with paper, with still using paper, and we just wanted to let everyone know that you have the option of printing it, but our purpose for automating the form is so that you don't have to print all of the documents and you don't have all of the paper. All right, Andrew. Next question, please.
So when documents are routed for review, do the review, oh wait, no, we've already answered that one.
Yeah.
Will there be a user manual for user tips? Yes, the user manual, the link I showed you at the beginning of training is a link to the user manual, which doesn't currently have user tips necessarily for troubleshooting. But if you do run into any problems, there will be someone to contact to address those issues for you.
Andrew, absolutely. It should be the small business specialist at your respective octave for any questions that you may have regarding that. Your small business specialist will then forward it to the core, who is Linda Waters. The acquisition plan would describe market research performed. This would then be entered onto the 653 form. This process seems to require a completed acquisition plan in order to process and obtain approval of the 653. The order of events is not clear. So, yes, you are required to conduct market research for all procurements. Now, are you required to have a formal acquisition plan? You're going to have to follow the requirements in the HISAR. What we're saying to you is that any market research that you complete, regardless of the format that you stated in, you must submit it into the system as your market research. The reason that we ask for this information is because SBA will not approve it without documentation showing that you made a concerted effort to locate small businesses. All right, thank you,
Okay.
Andrew.
And can you withdraw the form while it is being reviewed by the SB? I assume that means SBA?
By the small business specialist, maybe?
Well, regardless, at any point you can withdraw a form. Whether or not that's the best practice is not, while you can do it in the system, it may not be the best practice. So I guess that would be a question for you as to whether they should withdraw when it's at SBS or SBA level.
I think that just depends on the acquisition and the decision of the contracting officer. I don't think the small business specialist can make the decision on whether the acquisition the 653 form should be withdrawn.
Right, so that should be a decision performed by the originator.
By the originator and or their respective contracting officer.
Right.
So that's an optive decision. That's not a small business specialist decision, but you can withdraw it at any point in the process.
That is correct.
So there are several questions regarding the presentation. And again, yes, we will provide the presentation to you following. We will work with Workforce Development to provide that. We will also work with them to provide your copies, your certificates for your 1.5 CLPs for participating in the training.
So the next question is, when you're entering data in the beginning of the requisition form, you come to find out that in the funding office, you don't have the funding office loaded.
Yes.
How would you be able to reflect, or who can populate that information for you? So I assume this means if it's missing from the list?
Yes. So if all funding offices within HHS are going to be listed. If it is a non-HHS funding office, then it will state merely non-HHS office.
Right. And this is not necessarily currently in the system, but that is, I believe, an enhancement that's going to be done.
It will be made available. It will be done before the system before anyone can use the system.
Okay. Yeah.
So that change will be made.
All right. And what if you have more than 2 requisitions associated with the action? Do you only enter 2, or can additional fields be added? Currently, the system's only set up for 2 requisition numbers, but I'm not sure if that's an enhancement that would be in the future.
We certainly can make that as an enhancement. I was not aware that you needed more than 2, but most certainly if you feel that you need more than two requisition fields, then most certainly we can make that change. So if that is the case, will you please send that email to the core and request those changes? That change and any other change that you believe would benefit the department, please notify the core, Linda Waters.
Okay. How do we make the presentation full screen? It's hard to see the screen and the presenter's steps.
Okay, so at the very top, just as you do any other presentation, you should go up and hit the button that looks like 2 squares and that should enlarge the presentation.
And then another question. Oh, wait. Would there be any way to get printed hard copies of the processes and requirements? As far as the processes, meaning the walkthroughs, that is the user guide, is a series of walkthroughs, pretty much, with some additional background information on the system. Requirements, we did specify in the user guide when a field is mandatory, but I'm not sure if there's anything else that requirements means. Yeah? Okay.
All right.
The next question is, when you are an originator, are you able to be an alternate for a reviewer? How would that function be added to your current role? Is 2 accounts required, or can one log in to be used and able, and yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So in this case, when you are as a contracting officer, you can also be an originator. So, and if you are the contracting officer that is an originator, then you are not required to have have another contracting officer conduct the review. So that is the only way that you can have those 2 responsibilities.
Right. And if it's a case where you do need 2 substantially different accounts, the system is not currently set up to have 2 roles. While they may share functionality between the CS and CO user, they are still different roles in the system. You can't have both. So if you require 2 accounts, your small business specialist has the functionality to create an account for you.
And they can assist you.
Right, exactly.
All right.
Okay, and I believe we have another page. Questions? Okay. After the contract specialist enters all the data for review, do we send it to the CO through the system, or does the CO have to go in and search for it and then review? For contracting specialists, as I mentioned, they have a different end of the review form than a contracting officer. There's a drop-down menu where you select the specific contract officer that you'd like to send the review form to. They do not need to search for it. They will simultaneously get an email, and then it will also appear in their work list. So they should know, based on the email, that a new form has been added, and they should be able to access it from their work list.
All right. Will there be hard copies of the presentation? Okay, so we've answered that, I think, 4 times already. After the contracting specialist enters all the data for review, do we send it to the CO?
Same question.
So that's the same question.
We're getting some duplicate questions.
Yes.
Okay.
I missed the first 5 minutes and did not copy down the URL. Can you provide that? So the URL for the system is https://sbrs.hhs.gov, and it will also be on the slides when you receive them.
Right. And also just make sure you put an S at the end of HTTP, as it is a secured site.
Okay.
Okay.
And is an acquisition plan required regardless of the estimated dollar amount of the procurement? Again, you're going to have to follow the HISAR. I believe at this time the HISAR requires a formal acquisition plan for all acquisitions over $500,000. That, however, does not negate that the small business review still has to be performed above the simplified acquisition threshold of $150,000. That is still not a change.
And then will SBRS be integrated with PRISM?
Yes, that is our plan. We've had several discussions with the senior procurement executive about that. And so, yes, absolutely, we intend to do that.
Okay. So a question that came up is, do passwords expire? Currently, passwords do not, to my knowledge, expire in the system.
That's right.
But you can reset your password at any point in time. There's a button on the login screen, which I can show you right now. Okay. Which allows you to, assuming that it's not slow, will allow you to reset your password. Selecting that will generate a system-generated email, similar to when you got your new account, which will contain your user information and your temporary password. Here we go. So if you forget your password or you want to reset it because you're afraid of security, you can do that at any point in time by using the reset password tool. Okay. Do you have a help desk for the system? I believe Teresa may have brought this up already, but there will be, you can contact your small business specialist with any issues or questions you may have.
Yes.
And they will route it on to Linda Waters.
Yes.
If it
to
needs
the core,
to be,
yes.
Right, exactly. If it needs to be addressed. Okay.
Okay.
And then again, the question about CO routing.
Yeah. And then that's about the presentation.
So the PowerPoint presentation was too small to read.
Yep.
We will be providing you with materials for training, so you will be able to see that later on.
Okay.
Primarily, I was pretty much saying everything that was on the slide.
All right.
So if you could hear me, then you got all the information, but we will be providing that as well.
So Andrew, the question is, I receive requirements below the optive level. And so may we select funding offices at levels below the optive level? Currently, it's just set up for the optive level. And if, however, there is a funding office that you believe we should enter into the system, please provide that to the core, to your small business specialist, and then they will notify the core, Linda Waters, so that we will then add those. But then I think that may be optive specific. But if it is, please let us know. We want to design the system so that it helps you as much as it is able to.
Okay, and I believe we may be back at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's see if... Okay, let's see if new questions... It looks like new questions have been added. So let's go to here. Okay, the example in your session required an acquisition plan even though the estimated value was approximately $10,000.
Again, it was just for example purposes.
Right.
That's all.
The IHS manual states that we require a formal acquisition plan at the... Right, so this...
Again, so the question states that IHS requires a formal acquisition plan at the simplified acquisition threshold. Again, it depends on your optive requirement. If your optive has specific requirements, then you must comply with those requirements. This system is not designed to negate or supersede any of your optive acquisition requirements. It is required to conduct the review. As most of you know, the Small Business Act, which is a statute that mandates that all procurements over the simplified acquisition threshold must be considered for small businesses. And the reason they use that threshold is because anything below the simplified acquisition threshold is supposed to be set aside for small businesses only. And so that is why the threshold is the required, 150,000 is the requirement for the review. All right, next question, Andrew.
Okay. Does the period of performance require a to and from entry? When buying products, the projected delivery date is available, but there is not a start date. The system does not require those fields as mandatory. So conceptually, you could enter only one of those date values, and it would be associated with the review form.
Okay. So, Andrew, it looks like the next two questions we've answered.
Right.
So let's go to, is the form required for less than $150,000 that will be small business set-aside actions that per the FAR are basically are automatic small business set-asides? So, again, let me address that. If it is below $150,000, it is not mandatory. If, however, your optive mandates that you enter those that are below the SAT into the system, then you must comply with your optive requirements. And again, because it is below the simplified acquisition threshold, it automatically is supposed to be set aside for small businesses. At any dollar threshold above the SAT, if it is set aside for small business, then the review stops with the small business specialist. If it is not a set aside, then the SBA PCR will then conduct the small business review.
All right.
All right.
And then we have a question. If you could or if the 653 form needs to be submitted for an SBIR contract.
Again, is the SBIR contracts are not required. A 653 is not required. But if, however, your optive mandates it, then yes.
Okay. And could you restate the website from which you may download training materials and the user guide? I'll just jump in with the user guide. The user guide is available from the SBRS homepage. The training materials.
The training materials, we will archive the webcast on the HHS OSDBU YouTube page, and we will also work with the Office of Acquisition Workforce Development to see if they would like to host the live webcast as well for those individuals who were not able to participate in the training.
And the next question is, can revisions be made on previously reviewed forms? If the acquisition strategy changes, does a new form need to be created? Currently, you are able to update review forms,
Yes.
although you would need to, depending on what is changed, need to resubmit it for approval.
Yes.
So that's something that needs to be determined by you and your small business specialist.
All right. If someone is out of the office, is there a process in place to have a proxy? Yes, that's the great thing. If you know that someone is going to be out of the office, then yes, you can select. There are vacation rules, so you can select, for example, a contracting officer that is in the office, so you can provide them, select them to review your form.
Right, but also there's an additional level 2 where the contract specialist, who would be selecting the CO for approval, can select somebody else based on the fact that they know if someone's out of the office. So
Yes.
if you make everyone aware that you're out and you're going to be unavailable, then they can choose somebody else for that review. So
Yes.
there's a 2-level process for that.
So how do you attach a document?
You attach a document by, and I'll jump over to the system really quickly to give a reminder. Let's see, CO1, user. Okay. You do that by selecting and let's see if it's going to appear here. No, because I need to create a new one. You do that by selecting the attach document button on the actions menu in a new review form, and it brings up that supporting documents page.
Can you click on the attach document button?
Yeah, I'll need to enter a
Okay.
value and save. And attach. And it looks like this, where you can upload multiple documents to the review form. You can do this, I showed it at the end of the process. You can do this at any point where you have a document that you'd like to upload prior to submission. Okay.
All right.
Are COs prompted via email? Oh, that they have reviews? Yes, we've covered that question.
The answer is yes. Yes, COs are prompted via email.
And then, will we get a certificate for completing this training?
Yes, you will receive. Once we retrieve the registration list, we will ensure that everyone that is registered will receive a certificate, and we will provide that to the Office of Workforce Development so that we can ensure that everyone receives their certificate and their CLPs.
Okay. There's a question, is a sources sought notice sufficient evidence of market research? I assume in response to the market research document.
Yeah. You know, it really depends on what you're buying, on the acquisition itself. For the certain procurement center SBA procurement center representatives, sometimes that is not enough for them. And so it really just depends. I think it's a great place to start. I think that you definitely want to include any research that you've done in SAM, any research that you've done in the SBA, DSBS, or Dynamic Small Business Search, any access forums that your small business specialist has hosted and that you have participated in, any vendor outreach session, or any industry days that you have participated in. I think the more that you can demonstrate to SBA that you have made a concerted effort and done a thorough research for small businesses, the greater you increase your opportunity of having your review approved.
Okay, and I saw there were some questions that we missed. Do you need to save the document at the end of each page as Andrew did? That is not necessarily the case. As I mentioned, you can navigate through the form, which is the 4 pages, without losing any information.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for saving at multiple points in time would be in case something happens, you accidentally close your browser, lose internet connection, something happens, you would lose any information that has been entered prior to saving, or after your last save. So that was more of me being overly cautious. You don't need to save at any point except for when you want to navigate to the attached documents page. That's because the attached documents page is a separate page, and navigating away from the review form will cause your fields to be wiped. So just, I'd exercise caution just because we want this to go quickly and easily. We don't want you to lose any of your data.
All right. So, Andrew, the question is, are we going to get to the point where the different octaves have fields with default information, or will we have to enter all fields continually? So right now you have to enter all fields continually. If there's something that is Optiv specific, you're going to have to address that with your small business specialist that you would like to see. But currently, because it's a universal system, then we don't have anything, the system is not designed for one particular Optiv that has particular areas that they want to have the system structured. We can make those enhancements, but we'll need to know what is it that you would need to have that is default information for your Optiv. Once you log in from your Optiv email address, then your Optiv will automatically pop up as the contracting activity. So that information you won't have to enter continually. But the funding office you will have to select, especially since we have so many contracting activities that buy for other organizations. All right, Andrew, next question.
Okay, we have a question as to whether, so previously procurements under 25,000 that were small business set-asides did not require approval by a small business specialist. Has this process changed?
So the process has not changed. You may have Optiv specific requirements, and those requirements do not change. Again, over the simplified acquisition threshold, then all reviews are mandatory. All right?
Okay. I believe some of these questions were answered. What's the turnaround time?
Again, it varies. It depends on, who the reviewer's workload and, what their priorities are. It depends. Remember that the SBA Procurement Center representative has regulatorily has 5 business days to complete a review. So it really just depends. I've asked the small business specialists to complete their reviews within 2 business days. So it really just depends.
And we have a couple of questions about the webinar. The first question was whether or not this would be available after this training session's over. And I believe Teresa mentioned that it will be archived. So you will be able to access the training video. And then the next question is, what is the CLP value for this course?
The CLP value is 1.5. All right.
And I believe, let me refresh, but that may be the last of the questions. If I at any point missed your questions because we had a flood at the beginning, go ahead and let us know, and we will address those questions. But yeah, so Teresa, is there anything you'd like to add?
So there was a question that came in from the core, is that if you took training altogether without logging in, will you still get CLPs? So what you will need to do is provide that list of all of the individuals that participated in the training, that took it together, and then yes, we can provide you with the certificates and the CLPs. And that list will need to be provided to the core. So someone in the group can provide that listing to the core. Now, today this is the last training for the small business review system. Again, we will archive the webcast, and we will provide a list of the FAQs as well. The user guide is available, and we will also have the slide presentation. After all of that, if you still need additional assistance, your small business specialist is available to assist you. You should have a relationship with that small business specialist, and they can assist you with all of your small business needs. And so while this is our last training for the small business review system, we have begun our monthly small business training. And on December 5th, we will be conducting another live webcast on the subcontracting program, and we will continue monthly to provide training in various areas that we will believe that can assist the acquisition personnel. If there is training that you would like for us to provide to you, please feel free to notify your small business specialist, and they will notify the core, and we will ensure that we get that on the schedule. Otherwise, Andrew, I just want to thank you so much for all of your assistance, and I just want to thank everybody else for participating in the training today. Have a good day. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for joining me. Have a great day.